EDM and children's fairy tales may not seem like they go together, but in 2011, Skrillex channeled the 1991 movie Hook, a cinematic sequel to the story of Peter Pan. Based on J.M. Barrie's 1911 novel, Peter and Wendy, Hook imagines adult Peter returning to Neverland to rescue his two young children from Captain Hook. Bangarang is more than a Grammy-winning hit for Skrillex. It's the battle cry of the Lost Boys, Neverland's gang of orphans who never grow up and never back down from pirates. Connecting with kids as an adult, especially kids who haven't grown up in model environments, is an adventure. But when you do, the adventure may take you to unexpected places. That's what Ethan Adshade learned when he signed up for Teach for America right out of college. His plan to go into finance took a turn to a career in learning and development. Today, he's the Senior Director of Global Training and Development for Ticketmaster, and he joins Next in Queue to talk about what he's learned during his adventure. This week on Next in Queue, we talk about lessons from the classroom, navigating challenges during COVID-19, the power of preparation, strategies for classroom management, understanding people in education and business, education's impact on community, and the future of learning and technology. Let's get to it. Ethan Adshade, you are next in queue, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Rob. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. So glad to have you on the show and get this opportunity to chat with you. I met you, I don't know, a month and a half ago, give or take, and I've been looking forward to this. Just so that everybody knows where you're coming from. Today, you're the Senior Director of Global Training and Education for a name that we all know, Ticketmaster. But I don't want to talk to you just about kind of what you do for this large brand that we all know. I want to go back in time. When did you know you wanted to get into education or teaching?
It wasn't until my senior year of college that I knew that I wanted to specifically do Teach for America. That's when it really was, and it was a purely selfish, it was, hey, I heard this is a prestigious program, and if you do it, then you can go, get an MBA somewhere. So there was nothing altruistic about it. And then the actual act of teaching, right? Then it was like very much my experience, especially with Teach for America, and I think a lot of Teach for America alumni, core members, um, kind of experience this very much like a kind of a movie scenario, right? Because you are really, I mean, some people are placed in some extraordinarily difficult situations, schools. And so, that was my experience. I got thrust into like, all right, I want to do this thing. It looks amazing on your resume. Like, let's go after it. I even thought far enough ahead to think like, what would bolster my resume to get accepted to Teach for America. And it was like, oh yeah, my senior year, I'll work for the TFA campus
Mm.
ambassadors at the University of Florida. So I went and worked with them, got my in, and it was awesome. It was awesome, and it was a noble cause too. Like teaching, like this is a good thing, and hey, you do it for 2 years, and then you're out of there, and then you can go pursue your MBA or go make money in Wall Street. And yeah, then it all changed, right? Then you dive into a quick summer course, right? We went to LMU, we got shacked up in, probably the best dorms they have at LMU. I had a beautiful I was in a dorm, but I had a beautiful, view of the whole, LA, the ocean, Manhattan Beach, and all of that. And so, um, anyways, we go through probably an 8-week boot camp before and you get hired by a school, right? Every region operates differently because education, as you know, in every state is completely its independent thing. So every region, every city kind of operates differently. In LA, we had to get hired by the schools. So we did interviews, and my one and only interview, they were like, "Hey, Ethan, we got a tough job, like, but we think you're up for it. We want you to teach math at Locke High School." And I was like, "Tell me about it." And the assistant principal who was there, who was also a Teach for America alumni, so he was well connected. He was like, "To be totally frank, the teacher you're replacing got choked out by a student." Like, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" I was like, "How did that happen?" And they were like they were teaching the class and a student walked into the class and, like, choked them. And I was like, "Alright, like, that sounds wild, but let's go." Yeah, I was this young, out of college, like, egotistical, like, "This is gonna be a cool story," and it was. It was life changing. So yeah, so that's when I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I'll never forget, when I was early on, um, with the Teach for America process. I don't even think I'd gotten accepted yet. Actually, no, I had just gotten accepted. And because I was a Teach for America ambassador and I worked for the University of Florida campus as a Teach for America ambassador, um, I got accepted, and then I actually had to take the whole University of Florida accepted class, which I think was about around 20, and we actually went to a school. And so it was like this kind of like, "Hey, let's get to know." We had dinners, we had events, but, like, we were the accepted 2013 core members, from the University of Florida, and then we were gonna, I don't even think we had learned, like, which city we were, placed at. Anyways, the school that we had to go was this is in Gainesville, Florida, and University of Florida. Well, the school we had access to was probably about an hour north, closer to Jacksonville, where I'm from. And we go into the high school. We have, a set teacher who's related to Teach for America, whose classes we're going to go view, and then we're going to have a conversation. And we're going and doing that. And while we're doing that whole process, walking through this high school, I run into we end up in like a teacher's lounge area where like a assistant principal is kind of giving us a tour, talking to us. And I look over and I see Miss Steele, who was my 7th and 8th grade English teacher, and was I was the bane of this teacher's existence. I was the worst. I'm not kidding you. Like, um and luckily, I was the bane of multiple teachers' existence. And this teacher, uh, she was extremely, um, like, she was the tough teacher. And she actually had a beef with another teacher. And so these 2 tough teachers had beef with each other, and I would mess with both of them, right? And just I was an instigator, and, anyways, she saw me and she goes, "Oh my gosh, Ethan Adshade." I said, "Miss Steele," I said, "How's it going?" She goes, "What on earth are you doing here?" I was like, I'm actually working for Teach for America. Like I'm gonna be a teacher." And the joy and the like the I mean, she didn't even speak. She just stared at me for 10 sec and then she was like, "You're gonna be a teacher." And I was like, Yeah, I am." And I think she realized, like, karma's real, like, this kid who gave me hell is going to get everything back, and, she just kinda smiled and was I could tell what was going on through her head, and, I kinda laughed it off, and it was 100% accurate. Then I went and, got assigned to teach at Locke High School, and man, was did I get everything I dished out all, you know, 4 years of high school by 10. So,
It amazes me when I think about the people that I know that became teachers, and I know a lot of teachers in the K through 12 system locally, people that I went to school with, and some of them very predictable. You're like, "Well, yeah, that makes sense." And then there are others where you go, "Huh, okay." It sounds like you were in that latter camp. Maybe some people were surprised that you went into teaching.
yeah, I think with Teach for America, a lot of individuals are like that. I think if you're going through, university, with a passion to teach and with that's, you're gonna get a degree in education, that you're committing 4 years at least, to going through
Yeah.
that process. I studied finance throughout college. So Teach for America is really this like backdoor to say like, "Hey, would you want to commit 2 years?" So a lot of most of the people that were in my core, and I don't want to say most, I don't know the exact numbers, but the ones I still follow and hang out with, I would say 50% are still in the classroom. The other 50%
Wow.
are doctors, have and that might be gracious. It might be less than 50% are actually remained in the classroom. So I think a lot of individuals are like that, but yes, to answer your question, I am absolutely in that latter group. Like my friends and, my teachers were like, "You're gonna be a teacher." So
So I'm curious, right? Working with kids at any grade level, doesn't matter, is different than working in corporate America, even if you're in learning and development, right? Even if you're in corporate training. But I'm curious, number one, what lesson did you learn in that experience that has been used maybe over and over as you moved out of that world and into a different world altogether?
the the teaching is a wild business model. Like, education, the school is an insane business model, and to think like, I mean, what's your bottom line? It's human beings. It's like the future
Mm,
of society, and that is at least from the teacher's perspective. Obviously, they schools do make money and that, but the the output, the tangible good that you get from it it's a really crazy model, and so I the biggest thing that I took from it was I got a firsthand experience of, hey, you can build systems that produce outcomes. And that makes sense in computer development, right? When I was a kid, I've built websites, right? I've played video games, I've tried to make my own video game. Like I understood that. But it's really powerful. And this is what organizations are, is their system of people that produce an outcome, right? Like, can I organize these and a lot and when you have these systems made out of people, um, it can get difficult. Development, engagement, right? The human aspect of it um, makes it difficult, but it also makes it extremely rewarding. And so I realized that, hey, if you adopt a couple of mindsets, which I had to challenge myself, right? And they're basic research based things, growth mindset. A lot of it is like, hey, if you kind of approach this in a research based method, like you can actually build a system to get the outcomes that you want, right? With pretty much any population. And with teaching, that's the big thing. That's the big difference with your corporation and teaching is you don't choose your students, right? Right. Especially at the school I worked at. This was a if you were at my school, like you couldn't go to any other school,
right.
right? And so, yeah, I couldn't, and it was awesome to work with those students and be like, so to put it short, everyone's here heard of, growth mindset, right? And so I think that's one aspect of the big thing I took from teaching was like, whoa, this growth mindset is really important. I need to be able to not throw my hands up in the air and think this is impossible and give up on everything, because I have the objective of teaching slope intercept form, but my students and pupils that I'm addressing don't know how to reduce a fraction, maybe don't know how to divide, maybe can't, subtract two-digit numbers that well either. And so I think there's a lot of people when they come to that, it's like, whoa, 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 we got to start from the ground and build everything back up. Or that no, a true fixed mindset is there's no hope, right? Like
Yeah.
abandon ship, this is useless. But I think this is like a spectrum. And so I think I learned how to go on the really far end growth spectrum, right? Because you can get nihilistic. You can be like, oh my gosh, yeah, they've gotten from point A to point B, but look at the rest of these people.
Yeah.
Look at those students in that school over there. They're going from, way higher. And so that's a discipline, right? Because it's either like you're going to work in a hopeless environment or you're going to actually shift your mindset to a growth mindset in the fullest sense, in looking at and realizing like, okay, like we can get these little wins here. And these little wins actually mean something. And they'll actually um something I wrote about, when I was talking to you about, hey, writing about this experience and, you challenging me to think about this. I wrote about this idea of a tapestry.
Mm.
Um, and when you're looking at like, I don't know if you've ever seen a tapestry from behind, it looks terrible, right? It's just a bunch of stuff. And so I related my experience teaching as um, sewing a tapestry just from looking at the back for an
Mm.
entire year and being like, "What am I doing?" And trusting that, like, "Hey, I can take this needle and I can put it here." And it's like, "Well, where did you come up with that?" It was some research. It was some coaching. It was some development. It was some risk taking. It was a change in my mindset. Instead of fixed mindset, I'm going more growth mindset. Whoa, I just sat down and had a good conversation and I'm actually challenging those norms even more. I'm going to even have a more growth mindset. And it kind of took that kind of evolution, but the whole time I'm just behind the tapestry, pulling needles through. So it looks like a mess. And then finally at the end, I got the chance to turn around and look at it and be like, "Oh my gosh, it's beautiful what I just made." Like that was actually it was worth it. And that was an extremely rewarding, life transformational kind of experience to be like, "Hey, you can actually just put into work, not see any results, and then at the end see a beautiful like outcome and trust the process." So
I love the idea too. I know in my experience training that the biggest wins I ever got were people that if I had to guess, if they ended up in another classroom, they might have just not made it, right? They might have quit. They might not have been successful. And to see someone have to go through those struggles, but go through the struggle and then come out and be super successful with it, for me, always felt like incredibly rewarding to know that someone, started and they were on the struggle bus, right?
yeah.
And when they graduated off of that struggle bus and now you see them on a leaderboard, it feels really good to know that you played a part in that. And I have to imagine that Teach for America and going into some of these schools where some of these kids probably feel like they've been on the struggle bus, to see that growth in them is it has to just be an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because I'm a strong believer, like, I can't put any of my value of myself and my career on the outcome of my students, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was, like and I had great outcomes. Like, I don't wanna beat around the bush, like, my 2 years at Locke, like I had the best test scores. Like my first year, I had the way the school is structured, you can imagine we take a 2,100 person school and we split it up into 3 academies, 700 students each. Um, there's a philosophy behind that, right? Smaller school environment. Every principal or the principal knows all the students. We have 3 different principals. Um, well, that's what they do. So we really have 3 academies that are ninth through 12th grade with 700 students each, who they play on the same football and soccer team, but they don't interact in their classes day to day. And they're kind of separated on campus. The campus is big enough. We've taken over an old high school. Um, and so my first year, you take a end of high school exit exam in 10th grade, the California high school exit exam. This has since gone away, right? Testing has evolved since this. But this was what was needed. And I taught the 10th grade students at this 700 person academy. And so my whole job was to prepare them to pass the math portion of the Casey. The the English teacher was the 10th grade version of or I'm sorry, the English version of the Casey. So there was a math and English version. First year comes, scores come back. I was in Academy B, but Academy A and Academy C, math and English were both 30% across the board, right? But I think Academy C was 24%. That means 24% of the students who took the assessment passed the English Casey. Comes to Academy B, the English is 28%, the math is 84%.
Oh,
So it is just this outlier that's out of nowhere. And I taught 95% of those students. So the next year, we had a new principal, and that was one thing when I was writing my blog was the turnover and my experience of principals. I had 3 principals in 2 years. That was a wild experience. And kind of relate it to like the turmoil of high attrition at some of the previous organizations I've worked at. But anyways, my second year, um, the the new principal actually pulled me out for a week. He said, "How did you do it last year with your test scores?" I said, "This is how I did it." I said, "I could do it again for math and English. I can design a system for this, but you have to pull me out because I need like a week and I need the assistant principals to help me out because there's a lot of stuff we got to do." And he was like, "Absolutely." So he brought in a sub, pulled me out. I worked in the office and I built this homeroom curriculum, but like 30 curriculums. And we applied him. And so the big advantage was every teacher was just teaching the same thing to a group of rotating students. But what they would teach, the same topic that they would teach, would be um, differentiated based off the population of students that came to her. So then it was, okay, we have to now break up all of these students and organize them into groups. And the groups would be like, let's match them and group them based off their zone of approximatal, development. Right. So we need to make sure that they all kind of are struggling with this one thing. And then that's what the teacher will teach them and engage. And so we went through every single student, wrote them all down, organized them all. I went and built out all of these curriculum packets. I had all the math and science teachers teaching math, the math portion, all the English and history were teaching the English portion. And we went out and we did it. And it came back. We had, I believe it was 86% passed the math and 82% passed the English.
oh.
And the other 2 schools were again in the 30%. So that was again, that's not me. These are
The
students taking the
system,
test.
right? Yeah.
This is the community. This is all of that 100%. But this is saying, whoa, Ethan, you can build something that can have an impact.
Yeah.
And that's hugely rewarding for me as an individual to kind of have that experience and say, like, now go take this into corporate world, go take this into entrepreneurship.
So I want to get to that. But before we do, I'm curious, h- how did that systems thinking and that systems approach affect you during COVID? And if you need to give some backstory as to what you were doing at that time, please do. But I'm just curious, like, what did you leverage during COVID to help move things forward from a system standpoint? Because it sounds like you definitely approach things in that way.
Yeah, so that I mean, that's some years after I leave the
Yeah.
classroom, and so I leave the classroom, I'm now consulting for Discovery, Education, and, I am just about to we hadn't even planned to move to Washington yet, um, and then COVID hit. We had our baby boy, and then COVID hit 2 days later, and so all of my consulting work with Discovery Education, which was always in person, in the classroom, everything stopped and halted, right? I had a couple Zoom meetings with district leaders to finish off work we had, but it really did pause for about a 2-month period where it was just like, totally empty. That during that 2 months, me and my son's mother decided, hey, we needed to move. And that's where we chose Spokane, Washington, and we moved up here. Um, was still kind of iffy, it was still like, what are we going to do with Discovery? And it was just slow. So the state of Washington, and I knew, I was like, there's so much opportunity here. So I made a barometer report. Like I had my own consulting gig. So I was making all of this stuff to be like, who's going to buy it? But everyone was just shell shocked.
Yeah.
And again, as I can state, every single state's education system is so different. They're so unique. They're designed different. They're prioritized different. The amount of autonomy teachers have in their classroom is different. So moving from California up to Washington, I had to quickly kind of learn, like, what is that difference? And in Washington, we don't have one superintendent. Well, they do have one kind of state superintendent, but they have 9 ESDs, educational service districts, that geographically split up the state into 9 different areas. And each one of them have a superintendent. And so I kind of got the lay of the ground there, and the ESD nearest to the town that I moved in had this position that was, "Hey, we need someone to build out an LMS for this entire transition to 100% virtual, brought on by COVID." And that was I mean, that was literally it was just a perfect evolution. I developed systems and got outcomes in the classroom. Then I developed systems for discovery, getting outcomes with the curriculum and, adoption of curriculum by teachers, making sure the outcomes are there. And then it was for a whole state and like, hey, we've got to shift this whole program that used to be 100% virtual, or I'm sorry, 100% in person. We've never even done it. Like this is a one-off thing to 100% virtual. And so, yeah, you want to talk about systems, but the planning involved, the thinking, that was really cool to be able to come in and, sit with, there was probably about 17 of us across the state. 3 of us probably from each ESD around there, or 2 to 3. And Yeah, it was a really, really cool way to kind of just come up and say, "Hey, how are we doing this?" Right? And first thing, was, well, we need to get communication across, and we have to start at the highest level because we have districts making decisions that might not be optimal decisions, especially in their tech stack, right? Hey, don't get Microsoft Teams and this LMS. They don't work well together, right? Oh, you got Google Meets, then get Canvas. Those work. So kind of that was the first thing, advising them on that. Um, and then obviously supporting teachers, right? And it was the parallels from teaching at Locke and this COVID thing, and really, because when you're in the consulting thing, your students now are teachers or principals or district leaders. Um, that was Those were so similar because when I taught at Locke, all of my students, 100% were in poverty. And so I got to see the effect of massive stress in the home environment
Mm,
on students. And I had students going through some very adult situations, very, where they would walk into class and I could look at them and be like, you can't learn slope intercept form today. You need to sit down and you need a hug.
yeah,
Like you are dealing with it. Um, that was how teaching during COVID and building this system was, because you have these, teachers who are coming in to a brand new year. It's the scariest year of their lives, and they're dealing with COVID at home. Like
yeah,
it was so there was a lot of emotions, a lot of empathy. I saw a lot of great things, and you had to have a growth mindset. You had a
yeah.
mixed mindset and you looked at this stuff, you would shake your head. There was multiple times where I would, do research, go and observe a classroom, and I would be in a classroom, I would be in a Zoom room, and no kids the entire time would have their cameras on. It was just the teacher. Maybe the teacher didn't have their camera on, right? It was 30 black boxes and just talking. All right, complete this. So, um, yeah, if you had a fixed mindset and you view that, you say, throw everything out, like what is happening, and you get down on yourself. But with the growth mindset, we were able to say, okay, what can we use to get this better? Right? Well, how do we get 100% of cameras on? Right? How do we get 100% of students engaging in 100% of the work 100% of the time? And that was another thing that, again, Teach for America did a really good job. And I think this is such one of the best skill sets that I got and gained from teaching, and that's lesson planning,
Mm.
right? Planning every single day. And I taught multiple subjects. So I taught algebra and geometry and pre calculus, right? Or biology and physics. So I made multiple lesson plans. I wasn't teaching the same thing 6 times. And so getting good at lesson planning uh, it was a very helpful mind exercise for me.
It seems to me, Ethan, that that preparation then allows you the the mental and emotional bandwidth to deal with the situations that need that emotional side, right? The As you were talking about seeing that kid come into the classroom and going, "Yeah, you need some space right now." If I am not prepared with kind of the tasks I need to get done and the order that these need to happen in and the context with which all of that goes, I'm I'm focused on that as a teacher, a facilitator, a leader of whatever, as opposed to being focused on what I need to adjust to meet my people where they are on a given day in a given moment. But it's the prep that allows that to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the prep and then the knowledge of trust the process. Like there's trust the the preparation is everything, right? Because the prep gives me what my objectives are, right? What I'm even going after. It gives me the end first, right? And then I can figure out how I solution there. But I think the other aspect you're talking about, like in highly emotional things, there's also like, hey, there's a lot of research. Sometimes we run into projects. I know you've known this at work, right? Where like people are going into stuff and you're like, wait, why is this project? Why are we launching something like this? There's literally books that write out, like, here's how you do a sprint. Like, do y'all need a PDF? Like, there's a right way to do this. But sometimes we get, caught in those situations. And so I think the, the ability to in high chaotic, what you would call extremely tactical situations, where uh, you know, going back to Locke, like, hey, this student's about to curse me out and walk out if I don't adjust the temperature in this room
Mm,
now. I can't switch stuff on. And it's either you get defensive and be like, well, how dare she act like that? Like, I don't care. I'm the teacher. Get out of my class. Or you say, like, no, let me apply some actual real research backed
Mm,
practices.
mhm, mhm.
One of my favorite one is the positive, behavior narration, right? So, to answer your question, yeah, planning gives you that it gives you that outline, but you've gotta have experience. Yeah, you gotta do the research.
Yeah,
That I love research because I kinda look around, I'm like, "It works." Like, this 3-to-1, positive behavior narration, it works. I can go in a classroom and, you've told everyone you've worked really hard, right? You've worked really hard the night before doing an entire lesson plan, right? You've gotten everything set up, made you PowerPoint, you've printed everything out, you have a hands-on experiment they're gonna do too. Like, you're a good teacher, you want this to happen. And Billy's sitting over there in the corner and he hasn't got his pencil out and he's talking and he's not doing anything. There's like this emotion to be like, Billy, get your ass, like, focus, get in your seat. Where's your pencil? That's a negative call out, right?
mm.
And in a high school environment, in an intense environment, that's like a gunslinger, like in the Western. It's like everyone, all the doors shut. It's like, what's going to happen now? So I learned, and this is a research based strategy that someone told me, a coach, a mentor told me, like, you should do this. Like, don't tell Billy, hey, Billy, why don't you have your pencil out? Get your pencil out and get started. Go just say 3 positive behaviors around him. So instead, it was, "Hey, oh, Sean's got his pencil out and he's working on it. Oh, Mary's reaching for Mary's amazing. She's got her pencil now. Oh my gosh, Susan's already on number 2." And you just kind of build that. And by the time you've done it to 3 individuals and you look back, Billy already has his pencil out. He's already been cued. He already wants to. And I saw the impact it had on my classroom. I saw, like, whoa, I'm actually having 100% of students turn in 100% of work 100% of the time. Now, I will say in the moment, lesson planning, I hated it. I hated it.
Yeah,
And like, there's this one, and the reason every uh, semester, so you have 2 semesters, right? Every semester, you would get evaluated by our principal. And this was a very intense evaluation for kind of stage philosophy model, and you were evaluated. And so the lesson plan you turned in on that day was the best lesson plan you've ever written. And sometimes these lesson plans would be 20, 30 pages. Right. And this is before the time of ChatGPT. So I'm typing all this stuff out. Like, I hated this. But I will say, um, thinking back to it, there's a ton of value in it.
yeah,
There's a ton of value in going into these deep exercises, which in the moment you feel is fake. You're like, "Man, you don't come to my class every day, like, come to it every day to experience and rate me as a teacher. Now I gotta have this one big show." Of course, I'm telling my students, like, "Hey, y'all better be in your best behavior," right? Like, the bad student, I'm like, "Hey, taking an early lunch, like, here's some money for Subway. Go, go. Don't come to class because I need a perfect, I gotta deliver this." So it was very much a dog and pony show, but um, the work needed for those kind of big documents, there's value in it. It sucks at the time, but as I look back, I'm like, man, as you said, that preparation,
yeah.
right? Thinking about it, thinking about your students being that was the big thing about really in-depth lesson planning, was then going and looking at your students and thinking, okay, based off these objectives, based off the data I have on the student, where will the pitfalls be? Right.
Yeah.
And how I scaffold for this individual student to get it there. Um, in the business world, I can't really find too much correlations as far as strategy, but in the business world of people, which, you and I are in as leaders, it's everything.
Well, and
Like,
that's the thing that I keep hearing is it's it's not just I need to understand, right, my product or the subject matter that we're approaching, but I also have to understand people. I have to know
yep,
how people work and not just people in general, although people in general, right? There are strategies that you can adopt to help for most people in particular situations, but then thinking about for this particular person, how am I going to approach this? That all, right, makes you actually effective. And it all has to come together as
yep,
opposed to just, well, okay, I have my lesson plan and I know, how I'm going to approach this particular subject on this particular day or throughout the course of a week. That's important, but then there are people involved and
Well,
people are people are messy, right?
people are messy, and yeah, people are messy, but people are also they're also brilliant, which is fun, but they also, I mean, you have it exactly right, Rob, right? You have this, it's not just, hey, product systems, right? Hey, I've designed this awesome supply demand, with our supplier that, is going to be more efficient, right? Or like the quality system, right? That we're building with level A, right? That's a product kind of route. But then you have this whole people side behind it, right? So then you're working with the people, the development, the building the systems for the people, the scaffolding, to meet them where they're at. But even beyond that is, this is a huge correlation I see in teaching is when I was a teacher, I quickly realized I had students who I was their favorite teacher. I had students who they were my favorite student. I realized though that like this class wasn't their entire high school experience. It
Mm,
was a portion of it, but it wasn't the entire experience. And to relate that to business, where you're leading, right, is a classroom, it's a department. It's not the entire school. It's not the entire experience of that individual. And when we talk about customer experience, I look at like at a school, I don't look at the customers as the students. I look as the customers as the community, right? Like the community has such a school has a massive impact on the community that it's in,
yeah.
a really a tangible one. And so that's how I kind of view, when I think about the business, I'm like, oh, okay, like, well, my customers, how are they being impacted as the community? How are they being impacted? Right. And so I think I say that to say that when we're talking about the people persons, my impact on that aspect of community building, of business building, the most impactful I got was not anything systems, right? Systems were helpful, but it was also the, hey, for students, it was, you can come into my classroom 30 minutes early and eat breakfast. Lunch classroom, I'm always open. My door's always open. At the end of school, sometimes, when I wasn't coaching soccer, I would, host nerd class or, we had EDM class where a bunch of kids brought their laptops and try to make EDM music. Like we had fun and that built community, right? That was another way that I could just lend another thing to their high school experience, their school experience. And I think that's how we as leaders have to think about ultimately our employees if we're driving customer experience, right? Like that's how I'm operating. I'm operating in if I look at my school and my business, right, current career, it is I am, in school, I'm sitting here and I'm designing systems in order for students to get to that next little bit of learning to be productive, right? Like that's the goal now I hate tests too, but in the reality, I'm teaching towards a test,
Yeah.
right? I hate it, but that value in that test, right? Of that KC outcome has absolutely no impact, zero impact on that kid's life. It might have a great hit in their dopamine. They might be proud of themselves, and that is awesome. And the math they learn and the English they learn and represented on that test does carry value. But I'm sorry, hanging out with them during lunch and helping them figure out how to make a song or watching and cheering for someone when they're winning in Super Smash Brothers or working with the kid when his girlfriend just broke up with him, and working because he's coming after school. That is that impactful thing. And
Yeah.
it totally translates to the business. I can show you how to use emails and be more effective and stuff like that, but I can also meet you as a human being, right? And just hang out and we can do this human life thing together. And that that has a deeper impact in the community that goes well beyond. And I think we see where working 100% virtual, which I love, I absolutely love, but we lose that kind of thing there.
Yeah.
You definitely lose it in a school, right? Teaching school 100% virtually, it is extremely difficult to do effectively and inspiringly,
Yeah.
right? But with business, I think remote work is incredible. But
Okay.
when you are
We gotta pause here because I have to ask this. Are you the EDM guy? Is EDM your thing? Was this the kids and you were just like, I will work, I will meet you where you are, or were they meeting you where you were?
there was um there was definitely some EDM dabbling in my college days, and so I was say, but I think it started out as nerd class, right? And everyone's bringing their Game Cubes or whatever we had at that time and plugging it up into my projector and playing in. And I love that. I thought that was awesome because, the boys could be boys and they could chill there, and then the girls could hang out and do their thing in the back desk. And I loved having students around. Um, it was a specific student, Santiago, who came to me, and I think what brought him into the class was the Game Boys, and then what brought him over more because I would always blast some music and, "Hey, you guys know what Skrillex is?" They were like, "No, we don't know what Skrillex is." And then, "Well, you're gonna hear it." And I'm fresh out of college. I'm fresh
Yeah.
out of. That was a weird thing. You going all the way back to there's always people who you're like, oh, that will definitely be a teacher. And it's like that, I can't believe you're a teacher. Yeah, those I can't believe you're teachers. Like a lot of times there's like a Venn diagram with like raving or festivals or partying. It's very similar. It's like, but I have a bunch of people who I've been to festivals with. I'm like, you're a doctor now? Like we partied way. I think that's just the
Uh,
world we're in. But uh,
we are nearly out of time, but I did want to ask just very quickly, like, where do you see learning, whether this is corporate learning or K through 12 or both? Like, where do you see this headed, or what trend are you picking up on that you go, "Oh, well, that's different and certainly different than, um, I remember when I was teaching in a classroom," or what are you most excited about as it relates to learning?
I have kids now who are going into school, so I'm very
Yeah.
interested on the school side. I don't see public education radically changing. Like, I think
Mm,
we might see an adoption of AI technology and the facilitation of there's definitely some use cases for AI and the administration and data, collecting and analyzing, probably how to distribute some like workforce management things within a school. But I don't know about um, the modalities of learning changing too much. I think at least the content. No, I don't see a radical change in that. What I do see is um, kind of this. I think it's a focus in like you now have the ability to create an assignment and have a student turn in any form of evidence to represent that. They could write a
mhm,
paper, they could make a movie, they could do so many things. You can also represent learning in a ton of different ways. I can have an article, a picture, I can find a YouTube, or we can do a hands-on experiment. So I think the best learning is going to leverage those in a highly efficient, tied in ecosystem where my responses, right, and it's like, how do you fight against ChatGPT? It's almost like you almost have to dive into technology more. Either you totally rip it out and it's paper and pencil again, right? And we're just sitting and we're being monitored, or my evidence for my work isn't something ChatGPT can produce. It's
right.
something maybe ChatGPT can support me in, but maybe it's a video like this or a conversation like this. So I think that might be how um, the education, flows. I think it's going to be way more conversational, right? As in not only creating curriculum, right? I mean, I look at ChatGPT, I could save so much time lesson planning using something like that.
Yeah.
So, um, hopefully that gets better. But I see it. I see this the enterprise. I think we talked about this too a while ago too. Was like the stuff you can do at the legacy enterprise level is insane, right? Like if you have enough money, you can leverage this AI to do some insane things. And it's fun to work at corporations, similar to what you're working on that are doing insane things.
Yeah.
Like stuff that we talked about 10 years ago, I was like, that would be cool. But like, no, no, capturing 100% of all interactions and then at your fingertips having ChatGPT like accurately scan through it and be like, well, these are the trends I'm picking up and here's what I'm hearing. It's next level. Like
Yeah.
it's like, whoa, this is amazing. So I'm excited to see what businesses do. I'm also excited to see that type of technology get into the hands of, you know, that's one of the cool things you'll see. It's in education's business as well. There's pioneers, right? There's the entrepreneurs. There's the people pushing the fringe in education. I like to think of myself as that, like as a teacher. But when I was consulting for Discovery, I ran into some teachers that were like, "You're a true pioneer. Like you're doing some amazing things, right? Like I'm doing a physical lab where we're using thermometers and collecting data on computers, and that's their grade for the day. That's their classwork. Like we're not working in worksheets. We're going above and beyond. We're like working in the lab. And so I think that is just going to increase with the use of these tools. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's teachers right now with AI powered that are creating like super unique, individualized lesson plans for every single one of their students, you know? And so I think once we get that power and we get it into the hands of smaller businesses, teachers, individuals, we're really going to see an impact.
Yeah.
But we also have to be there's a social side to it too. And that's a big thing. I don't see it so much in work, although I'm blessed to be at a company that advocates for mental health so, powerfully. Um, the mental health that AI and stuff is causing in students is pretty that's a whole nother beast to unpack,
Yeah.
right?
It's a
We
whole
talk about
nother episode.
exactly. So and I got to experience that was one of the unique things in my time. One of the I guess the big differentiators from my time in high school to the students that I taught in high school was the rise of social media.
Yeah.
You know, Snapchat can ruin a kid's day. That's what I'll say. So it was interesting.
Yeah. Well, Ethan,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this conversation. Thanks for being on Next in Queue. I really appreciate you.
Rob, thanks for putting on a badass show, man. I'm excited. I appreciate you. I hope to see you soon.
Next in Queue is produced by me, Rob Dwyer. Theme music is courtesy of Big Red Horse. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with at least one person. Word of mouth is the best way for people to discover new content. And thanks for listening.